Good evening, everybody. My name is Brendan Baylott. I'm the administrator here at the Great Lakes Shipwreck Research Group and the president of the Wisconsin Underwater Archaeology Association. Welcome to our Ghost Ships Festival speaker sneak peek. Tonight, we are really privileged to have two presenters that are going to be at Ghost Ships this year that I had never met before. It was sort of interesting how we met. Uh, After Bob Jake and I had located the wreck of the Trinidad, they contacted me and reached out and said, "Hey, that's cool," And I'd never met them, I'd never heard of them, and I looked and I'm like, "Oh my God, they've got a big shipwreck find in the news right now too." They had found the Africa, so I thought, well, how cool. And when I said, yeah, they were like, maybe we could work together sometime on something. I said, sure, maybe. We do a lot of the same stuff, have a lot of the same interests. And then when it came time to do the Ghost Ships Festival, I thought, well, who better to have at the Ghost Ships Festival than Yvonne and Zach? So welcome, Yvonne and Zach. Thanks for doing this.
Our pleasure.
Thanks for having us.
You bet. So Yvonne Drebert and Zach Melnick are the principals of Inspired Planet Productions. They are professional documentary producers. And what a cool type of presenter to bring to Ghost Ships. Some of the work they do with underwater ROV technology is really amazing, and they're going to have a booth there, and so you can meet them in person. And they'll have. Are you bringing an ROV to show?
We are bringing our ROV. Its name is Kai, named after one of our Great Lakes fishes. So everyone will get to see it and check out our tech.
Very cool. I'm going to go ahead and take us off the screen and put up some of the background to you. So, guys, tell me about Inspired Planet Productions. How did that all start?
Yeah, so Zach and I are actually a husband and wife documentary team, and we actually got our start in the history world here in Ontario. We live in Ontario, Canada. We live on the Saugeen or Bruce Peninsula, which is kind of like the Mirror of the Door Peninsula here in Ontario. So we kind of have a special place in our hearts for Wisconsinites. But
and we actually started making history documentaries almost 20 years ago. So we started a nonprofit association that worked with communities and our provincial public broadcaster, TV Ontario, to make stories about the different community histories across Ontario. We did this for many years, and in fact told many a shipwreck story about the Great Lakes while we were doing that work. But we decided that we were gonna explore our love of nature a little bit in the last few years, and so we focusing more on nature and sustainable development type documentaries, and that really is what led us to try to figure out how we could peer into the waters of the Great Lakes to tell people a story that most people don't know very much about, which is really how the quagga mussel, the relative of the zebra mussel, has really transformed that ecosystem out there.
Very interesting, guys. I know the mussels, weren't there when I started scuba diving, and we'd go out there and kind of braille dive the wrecks, and nobody was interested. You could take pictures of the shipwrecks, but they didn't really attract much attention. After the lake cleared up, oh my God, there's all these beautiful shipwreck pictures coming out of the Great Lakes. Of course, there are also no, commercial fishing boats anymore, charter boats on Lake Huron because the fishery died. So it's a double-edged sword. Some have worried that that's coming to Lake Michigan as well, but we shall see. So, guys, your background, how do you get interested in something like this? Tell me a little bit about what attracted you to doing this.
Yeah, so where we live here on Lake Huron, the lake is literally kind of right outside our door here. We moved here about 8 years ago, but we grew up on Lake Erie, actually. So we've been kind of Great Lakes people all our lives. And we noticed that we couldn't buy fish anymore. Just like you were saying, Brendan, the fisheries here on Lake Huron are having a really tough time. And we kind of started digging into that. Like, why is that? What's going on here? And, the water outside is gorgeous. It's so clear. It's really beautiful. And the more we started looking at it, the more we realized there might be something wrong here. And that's when we kind of started digging into this story of the quagga mussel, how it's changed our lakes. They're about 3 times clearer now than they were about 30 years ago. And so we started developing a documentary that we're calling All Too Clear, that looks at that story of how the quagga mussels have changed the Great Lakes, probably more than anything since the last glaciation. And at the same time, there's been a really kind of amazing jump in ROV technology that Zach's going to tell you about.
So we have the clear waters right out the front door here. And it's also the middle of COVID, so we're trying to figure out, so what's a story we can do close to home? And that led us down this rabbit hole of both technology and trying to understand what's going on out there in the ecosystem. So there has been, of course, science ROVs for a long time. You guys are well versed with those, but the filmmaking community, this is brand new stuff. So there's a company in New Zealand called Boxfish Robotics, and they've basically taken the like a dive camera enclosure and thrown it into an ROV that can go to the bottom of Lake Superior if you want, with a full frame sensor on it, and then a fiber optic connection back to the boat. And then so, we're able to get extraordinarily good video quality that would have been almost impossible to get before, even down, right now with the clarity out in Lake Huron, we can get an image at about 300 feet of water, on a sunny day in the spring without any lights. So wow, that's pretty exciting as far as what it's enabled us to tell this story, right? Because before it would have pretty much been impossible to tell, or at least we'd have to be, NOAA and had tens of thousands of dollars a day to go out there on a big boat. But now Yvonne and I can just go out and go to the bottom of Lake Superior, if we so desired on a Saturday. So and get quality that looks pretty good. So that's really what this technology has allowed us to do.
Yeah.
Wow, that's really amazing, guys. I mean, when we go out, with diving, you can only go so deep, right? And when, for example, when we found the Trinidad, we could see it on side scan sonar, but it wasn't really until we put an ROV down there that we were able to see, well, we knew what ship it was, but to confirm it. So anyway, guys, so a big part of why, I thought, wow, we should really get these guys at the Ghost Ships Festival is that, you guys found a shipwreck, a really major one too, one that people have been looking for. Tell us the story of how that happened.
Well, we had been working on trying to tell this story of really fish in the Great Lakes, whitefish in particular. So we have lots of really good relationships with the people who do fishy science stuff in the US and Canada. And it just so happened that the United States Geological Survey was going by, way out there, but not too far from where we live. And they found a bump on their fancy fish finder, basically. It wasn't a side scan sonar or anything. And through the, grapevine, we learned that this bump was there, and we'd worked a lot with the USGS on this project. And so we decided to go out and see if it was just a bump or if there was something cooler. And it was definitely something cooler.
Honestly, Brendan, I thought we were going to find a pile of rocks. And so it was, a Saturday afternoon in June, and we called up our friends, said, hey, we're going to go check this thing out. You guys want to go for a boat ride? And they said, sure. And they brought their dog, and we start heading out offshore, and it's pretty far out there, and it's getting a little rough. And we decide, should we do this? It's getting a little rough, but we decide, okay, we're out here. Let's just do it. We put our ROV over the side.
And that's actually the view that we got right there. That was the very first thing that we saw. And so, it only took a few minutes from the coordinates that we got from the USGS folks for that view to happen. And so we started freaking out, really. We had no idea what boat it was, of course. I mean, we didn't know what to even really look for. But as we got sort of closer and started looking around, we realized that this is a wooden hulled vessel, probably a steam ship. So we
saw the
got
stack on
super
it.
excited.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it was actually, of course, when something like this happens, there's lots of swearing and all of that kind of stuff that we don't say on TV. But the other thing is our friends were starting, who aren't really boat people, were starting to get seasick.
Oh,
So, that first dive wasn't as long as we would have liked, but we got down and we saw that there was in fact a ship there. And so, it's kind of like, what do we do? What do you do when you find a shipwreck? And so, the story kind of unfolded from there. We ended up getting in touch with the Parks Canada underwater archaeology folks, and they kind of connected us to some of the folks we should speak to locally. And of course, now the site is registered and protected with the province of Ontario. But we've met some really amazing people through this, and folks like Scarlett Janusis, who is local here to the Bruce Peninsula. She's an underwater archaeologist, as well as Patrick Folks, who's a marine historian. We all got together and we looked through all the footage, and we kind of made a short list of what boats do we think it could be. So we went back again after we'd gotten our archaeological license to go check it out. We went back a second time on a really gorgeous, super calm day. I don't know how we got so lucky that second time. Went back down, and with our ROV, we're able to, it has something called a USBL on it. So it has a sensor on the actual ROV device, and then there's a sensor that we throw over the side of the boat. And I don't know for any other folks out there who have used ROVs, but as soon as you throw it over the side of the boat, you don't really know where it is. So this fabulous device helps us pinpoint exactly where the ROV is and allows us to do things like take measurements. So we were able to measure the boat. And then, of course, that second trip, we spent lots more time, and we found a whole bunch of coal around the ship.
yeah.
And so that's kind of the measurements and the coal kind of really twigged us to this being the Africa.
And the location, it was approximately where the historians thought that the Africa would go down. And the crazy part is that we actually both live and are in right now a place called Larson Cove. And so the captain of the Africa was Captain Hans Larson, named, so our community is named after Captain Hans Larson, who went down on the Africa. So it's just sort of that crazy local connection that we have, this sort of personal connection to, and then sharing the story locally with people. Of course, their minds are blown, and we're really, really happy to be able to fill in a piece of that local history, right? Yeah. So how often do you get to make that kind of contribution? So we're pretty we feel pretty special about that.
Well, very neat, guys. So tell me, are there any future plans for this site? Do the archaeologists have any plans to do any work on it? Or are people going to do a photogrammetry model? Do you know what's going to?
Yeah, well, so on our most recent trip to the Africa, we brought along the lovely Kayla Martin, who's really into the photogrammetry here in Ontario, with the goal of trying to get the footage we need to do a 3D model. Unfortunately, it was surprisingly turbid the day that we went down with her, so we weren't able to get that footage. It wasn't this nice clear day like you see in the photographs. So the plan is this spring to head back out and get the footage necessary to make a 3D model. But the other cool thing that's come out of this is that the descendants of Hans Larson, the captain of the Africa, have since gotten in touch with us to say, hey, this is cool. This was our grandfather. And so this spring, we're planning to take those descendants out on our boat with the ROV and go check out the site and hopefully commemorate the site in some way and their family.
That's really neat, guys. I know one of the questions you asked is, such an important question. It's like, what do you do when you find a historic shipwreck? And that's sort of the topic of my and Bob's talk there, because we've done it, several times. And, and not all of them have gone really well. And a lot of the ships that have been found have not had good outcomes. And so, finding out how to make the best out of these discoveries and use them to educate communities and use them as a vehicle for teaching is a big thing that we like to do. And we're so fortunate here in Wisconsin to have an active maritime archaeology program in our state that they just love this stuff, you know. They say, what do they call our pampered Wisconsin shipwrecks? Because anytime a board washes up on the beach, Tammy Thompson's out there with a tape measure.
That's great. That's
So
great. Well,
anyway.
actually, Brendan, of course, that's how we met you. Me saying, "Hey, we found this." You were one of the people that I was like, "What do we do with this? How do we talk to people about it? How do we make sure that the Africa stays safe while we're doing the archaeological work, and then that people can actually get something out of this discovery in the future as well?" So one of the things we are developing right now is, what's the next documentary after All Too Clear, and maybe it's something to do with shipwrecks in the Great Lakes and these kinds of amazing discoveries that are happening. We're seeing it feels like we're hearing more and more about shipwrecks that are being found in the Great Lakes because of the cool advances we've had in technology in the last few years. So this might be in the future for us, maybe another documentary and another talk about shipwrecks in the Great Lakes.
We are in somewhat of a golden age for shipwreck discovery now, I would say, and like you say, it's the technology. Unfortunately, the sport diving community is largely aged out, and there's a social phenomena in that young people are not replenishing those ranks for a number of reasons. Some are economic, others are cultural, but it's not a cool thing to do to buy your own scuba equipment and go out recreationally diving anymore, even though the water is clear now. And
Well, maybe there's some hope here, actually, where we live, just south of the town of Tobermory. It is, we live on a peninsula that sticks out into the middle of Lake Huron. And so, of course, there's lots of shipwrecks around here that have been discovered well before the Africa. So maybe this place is a little bit of hope, because it seems to be a pretty busy diving hotspot in the summertime. So maybe that'll catch on.
Hopefully it will. Well, guys, thanks again so much for coming on and doing this little short. And if obviously you didn't give away everything, there's going to be some really cool stuff in the talk. So please do come to the Ghost Ships Festival. Tickets are available online at ghostshipsfestival.com. It is $20 per person for the full event. Online, $25 at the door. It's going to be a really cool event. We have about 30 different booths from sponsors and exhibitors. We have live music from Lee Murdoch, and it's going to be an awesome opportunity to network. We're going to be right next to the Wisconsin Maritime Museum. If you want to go next door and see just amazing maritime history displays there, shipwreck artifacts, all sorts of cool stuff. So do register if you can. All right. Well, join us next week where we will have another Ghost Ships Festival speaker sneak peek. Let me just take a quick look and see who we've got up. I think, if I'm not mistaken, that I have, it's going to be me and Bob. Bob, Jake, and I are giving a preview of what we're going to talk about. So join us next week, Tuesday. I think it's going to be 7 o'clock again. Thanks again, Yvonne and Zach. Stick around afterwards. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.